The gleaming silver ship shuddered violently as it entered the atmosphere of planet KX 2249. Inside the cockpit, Jack Miller gripped his seat's armrests, watching the alien crew scramble to regain control. The ship's warning systems blared in 3 different languages, none of them human. "Engine failure imminent," announced the ship's computer in its flat, mechanical voice. "Gravity well stronger than calculated. Emergency landing protocols engage." Jack observed his 3 alien companions with growing concern. Their scaled skin had turned pale, and their 4-fingered hands trembled as they worked the controls. They were from peaceful worlds, places where the gravity was gentle and the air was always clean. This mission was supposed to be a simple cultural exchange. Show the aliens how humans worked, learn about their ways. Nobody had planned for this. The ship's captain, Blue, named for the shifting patterns on his skin, turned all 4 of his eyes toward Jack. "The planet below. It's a Class 12 death world. We weren't supposed to come anywhere near it." His voice quivered. "The gravity is twice Earth's standard. The atmosphere contains toxic compounds. The wildlife." He didn't finish the sentence. Through the viewport, Jack could see the planet's surface rushing up to meet them. The landscape below was a mix of dark purple vegetation and rust-colored rocks. In the distance, massive storm clouds gathered, crackling with electricity. He had read about places like this during his training, but seeing one up close was different. "How long until impact?" Jack asked, keeping his voice steady. His years of emergency training kicked in, pushing down the fear that threatened to surface. Green, the ship's engineer, chittered nervously. 3 minutes, maybe less. The gravity is tearing our engines apart." Jack unbuckled his harness and moved to the storage compartment, ignoring the aliens' shocked expressions. Moving was already harder. The ship's artificial gravity was failing, letting the planet's brutal pull take hold. Each step felt like he was wearing a heavy backpack. "What are you doing?" asked Red, the science officer. "We should remain seated for crash landing." "Gathering supplies," Jack replied, pulling out his survey kit and emergency pack. "We're going to need them." The aliens watched in bewilderment as he quickly collected water purifiers, basic tools, and medical supplies. The ship groaned as it cut through the thick atmosphere. Outside, the metal hull began to glow from the friction. Jack returned to his seat just as the ground became clearly visible, a clearing in the middle of what looked like a forest of giant mushroom-like plants. "Brace for impact," Blue shouted. The crash was surprisingly controlled. The ship's automated systems did their best, but they still hit hard enough to snap trees and dig a deep furrow in the purple soil. When they finally stopped moving, Jack was the first to recover. He checked himself for injuries. Just bruises, then looked around at the others. "Everyone alive?" he called out. 3 shaky voices responded in the affirmative. The aliens were terrified but unhurt. Jack helped them out of their seats, noting how their bodies trembled under the intense gravity. They were built for worlds with less than Earth's gravity, and this planet had twice what he was used to. The ship's emergency lights cast an eerie red glow through the smoke-filled cabin. Through the cracked viewport, Jack could see the alien sun setting. Night was coming, and he knew that on Deathworlds. Night was when the real dangers emerged. Blue accessed the ship's damaged computer. "The distress beacon is active, but rescue could take days. The nearest ship is." He trailed off, his skin patterns turning the sickly gray. "We're going to die here. Nothing survives on a Class 12 world without advanced shelter and protection." Jack checked his watch, an old-fashioned mechanical one that could withstand electromagnetic interference. They had maybe 2 hours of daylight left. He could already hear strange sounds from outside, calls and movements that spoke of large creatures. "We're not going to die," Jack said firmly, checking the seals on his emergency pack. "I'm from Earth, a Class 8 death world by your standards. This place is nastier than home, sure, but the principles are the same." He moved toward the emergency hatch. "First rule of survival: We need shelter before dark. And we need to start now." The aliens stared at him in disbelief as he began to formulate a plan. They had never seen a Deathworlder in action before. They were about to learn why humans had earned their reputation across the galaxy. Jack stood at the ship's exit hatch, testing the air with a portable sensor from his survey kit. The aliens watched nervously as he studied the readings, their bodies struggling against the crushing gravity. "The air won't kill us instantly," he announced, "but we can't breathe it. Everyone needs to keep their breathing masks on." He checked the seals on his own mask, then helped the aliens adjust theirs. Their trembling hands made the simple task difficult. "How can you even move in this gravity?" Green asked, his voice filled with wonder. The alien engineer had given up trying to stand and sat on the tilted floor of the crashed ship. It's impossible." Jack smiled behind his mask. "On Earth, some of us lift weights heavier than our own bodies for fun. This is rough, but we can manage." He didn't mention how his own muscles were already aching. No need to worry them more. Outside, the alien sun painted the purple forest in deep red light. Strange bird-like creatures circled overhead, their wings spanning at least 15 feet. In the distance, something large crashed through the mushroom forest, making the ground shake. Blue's skin pattern swirled with anxiety. "The wildlife here. According to our databases, even the herbivores are apex predators by most world standards." "Then we better get moving," Jack said, pulling out a portable scanner. "I need to find a defensible position." He stepped out of the ship, his boots sinking slightly into the purple soil. The gravity made each step feel like he was walking through deep mud while carrying a heavy backpack. The aliens followed him reluctantly, crawling more than walking. Red, the science officer, kept recording everything with a small device attached to his suit. Even in their terror, the scientific instinct remained strong. Jack moved methodically, testing the ground with each step. His Earth survival training kicked in automatically. High ground, water source, defendable position, natural shelter if possible. He spotted a rocky outcropping about 200 meters from the crash site. "There," he pointed. "Those rocks will give us something solid at our backs." "You want us to go out there?" Blue's voice cracked. "In the open." A screech from above made them all look up. One of the flying creatures had descended lower, clearly curious about the newcomers. Its beak was lined with rows of sharp teeth, definitely not a peaceful herbivore. "We stay here, we die," Jack said simply. "The ship's hull is compromised. Night's coming. We move now." To demonstrate, he began walking toward the rocks, maintaining a steady pace despite the gravity. He kept his movements smooth and confident, remembering his training about predators. "Show no fear. Don't run. Stay aware." The aliens followed, struggling every meter of the way. Jack stopped frequently to help them, showing them how to move while conserving energy. Every few minutes, he scanned the surroundings, noting with growing concern how much activity was increasing as sunset approached. "How?" Green paused to catch his breath. "How are you so calm?" Jack helped the engineer over a fallen mushroom stalk. "Because panic gets you killed. On Earth, we have a saying, knowledge weighs nothing. Everything I learned about survival, every skill I practiced, it's all up here." He tapped his helmet. "And right now, those skills are telling me we can survive this." They were halfway to the rocks when the first real threat appeared. A six-legged creature, built like a mix between a bear and a rhinoceros, emerged from the mushroom forest. Its armored hide gleamed in the fading light, and two sets of eyes focused directly on their group. The aliens froze in terror. Jack's heart raced, but his mind remained clear. He pulled out his emergency flare gun, a simple tool, but effective. "When I fire this," he whispered, "we move. Slowly but steadily. No running. Follow my lead." The creature charged. Jack aimed the flare gun high and fired. The bright red light and loud bang startled the beast, making it rear back. He fired a second flare directly at its feet, creating a barrier of bright light and smoke. "Move," he ordered calmly, guiding the shaking aliens toward the rocks. The creature paced behind the line of flares, unsure about this strange prey that commanded fire. They'd reached the rocks just as the flares began to die out. The aliens collapsed against the stone, exhausted but alive. Jack immediately began examining the rock formation, his mind already planning their shelter. "You?" Blue's skin showed patterns of disbelief and respect. "You knew exactly what to do." "How?" "Because humans learned the hard way," Jack replied, pulling out his tools. "Everything that makes Earth a death world by your standards. The predators, the disasters, the climate extremes, they all taught us something. And now," he said, looking at the darkening sky, "I'm going to show you how we put those lessons to use." With night approaching quickly, Jack worked methodically despite the crushing gravity. He examined the crash site through his binoculars, marking useful pieces of the ship's wreckage in his mind. The aliens huddled near the rocks, still breathing heavily from their short journey. "We need supplies," Jack announced, checking his mask's air filter. "The ship has materials we can use." He turned to Green, the engineer. "What parts of the hull would be easiest to remove?" Green's eyes widened. "You want to take apart our ship?" "We need metal sheets for shelter walls," Jack explained patiently. "The emergency hull panels near the cargo bay should work. They're lightweight but strong." Red continued recording everything, his scientific curiosity overtaking his fear. "Fascinating. The human is displaying tool use and resource-gathering behavior, similar to primitive survival instincts, yet applying it to modern materials." Jack couldn't help but smile. Even in danger, the alien scientist kept making notes. Not primitive at all. "We still teach these skills to everyone who works in space. Now, who's coming with me to the ship?" The aliens looked at each other nervously. Blue's skin rippled with anxiety patterns. The predator might return. "It will," Jack agreed, pulling something from his pack. "That's why we're setting up these." He placed small devices in a circle around their rocky shelter. Motion sensors with built-in noise deterrents. Not perfect, but they'll warn us and confuse most animals. The aliens watched in amazement as Jack quickly set up the perimeter. Each movement was precise, despite the oppressive gravity that made even breathing a challenge. He checked his watch again. About an hour of daylight left. "Green, I need your help," Jack said firmly. "You know the ship better than anyone. Blue and Red can stay here and watch our backs." The engineer struggled to his feet, inspired by Jack's confidence. Together, they made their way back to the crash site. Jack moved slower this time, supporting Green when needed. Every few steps, he scanned their surroundings, staying alert for threats. At the ship, Jack's survival training took over. He quickly identified the most useful materials: hull panels, interior wall sections, connector rods, and spare parts from the engine room. Green, despite his exhaustion, proved invaluable in pointing out how to safely remove each piece. The artificial gravity generator, Green chittered excitedly. "It's damaged, but maybe we could use parts of it." Jack grinned behind his mask. "Now you're thinking like a human. Grab anything that might be useful. On Earth, we call it scavenging. It's kept us alive countless times." They worked quickly, gathering materials and tools. Jack showed Green how to carry items while maintaining balance in the high gravity. He also collected all the emergency supplies he could find: light sources, power cells, and medical kits. A distant roar made them both freeze. Different from the bear rhino creature. Something bigger. "Time to go," Jack said calmly, though his heart was racing. They gathered their salvaged materials and began the careful trip back to the rocks. The walk back was tenser. The alien sun hung low on the horizon, casting long shadows through the mushroom forest. Strange calls echoed around them. Jack noticed how the local wildlife was becoming more active as darkness approached. They were halfway back when Jack's trained eyes caught movement in the shadows. He stopped, placing a steadying hand on Green's shoulder. "Don't." Move. Jack's voice was barely a whisper. A pack of creatures stalked through the undergrowth. They moved like wolves, but had scaled skin and multiple eyes. Jack counted 6 of them. Pack hunters, just like on Earth. Jack slowly reached for his flare gun, but stopped. Too many of them. The flares would only scatter them briefly, making them more aggressive. Instead, he pulled out a small device from his pocket. An ultrasonic deterrent. On Earth, it was used for aggressive dogs. Here, it was their best chance. When I activate this, he whispered to Green, we walk, not run. Walk, straight to the rocks. Ready? Green's whole body trembled, but he nodded. Jack turned on the device. A high-pitched whine filled the air. The wolf creatures stopped, shaking their heads in confusion. Some backed away, others pawed at their ears. Walk with me, Jack said firmly, guiding Green forward. They maintained a steady pace, never showing fear. The creatures followed but kept their distance, confused by the strange sound and their prey's confident behavior. They reached the safety of their rocky shelter just as the first stars began appearing in the alien sky. Blue and red helped them with the salvaged materials, their movements now more confident after seeing another successful display of human survival skills. That's twice you've saved us, Blue said, his skin showing patterns of deep respect. Day's not over yet, Jack replied, already sorting through the materials. Now comes the real test. We build our shelter before full dark, and I'm going to teach you all how humans do it. The last rays of the alien sun cast long shadows across their worksite as Jack organized the salvaged materials. His muscles burned from the planet's crushing gravity, but he kept moving. Time was their enemy now. First rule of shelter building, Jack explained, laying out hull panels, is to use the environment to your advantage. He pointed to the rocky outcropping. These rocks will be our back wall. Saves time and materials. Red recorded everything while Blue and Green watched in fascination as Jack drew a simple plan in the purple dirt. But how can we build anything in this gravity? Blue asked, his skin patterns showing confusion. We can barely stand. Jack pulled out a long metal rod from their salvaged materials. Leverage, he said, demonstrating how to use it to move a heavy hull panel. The laws of physics work the same on every world. We just need to work smarter, not harder. The aliens learned quickly. Jack showed them how to brace the panels against the rocks, using broken pieces of the ship's frame as supports. Every few minutes, strange howls and roars echoed through the darkening forest, making the aliens jump, but they kept working. The ground here is like clay, Jack noted, testing the soil. Good news, we can pack it around the base of the walls for extra support. He showed them how to mix the soil with fibrous material from the local plants to make it stronger. Sweat soaked his shirt under his survival suit, but Jack didn't slow down. He remembered his old instructor's words. The deadliest predator is not the one with the sharpest teeth, but the one that comes after you're too tired to run. A loud crash from the forest made them all turn. Something big was moving through the mushroom trees, getting closer. Keep working, Jack said calmly, though his heart was pounding. Green, help me with this panel. Blue, mix more of that soil. Red, keep watch. Warn us if anything gets too close. They had 3 walls up when the first real challenge appeared. A creature the size of an elephant emerged from the forest. It had a long neck covered in armored plates and 6 powerful legs. Its head housed multiple eyes that glowed in the growing darkness. Don't move, Jack whispered. It's an herbivore. See how the jaw is built for crushing plants. But it's big enough to step on us by accident. The creature moved closer, curious about the strange construction. Jack slowly reached for his ultrasonic device, but the beast was already too close. One wrong move and it could panic, destroying their half-built shelter. Then Jack noticed something. The creature's eyes kept focusing on the shiny hull panels. It's scared of its own reflection, he muttered. Blue, very slowly, help me turn this panel. The reflective side out. They carefully adjusted the panel. The creature saw its reflection, and backed away, confused and nervous. He trumpeted once, a sound that shook the ground, then turned and lumbered back into the forest. Remarkable, Red whispered. You read its behavior in seconds. Earth has lots of large animals, Jack explained, already back to work. You learn to understand them, or you don't survive. Now help me with this roof support. The aliens worked with renewed energy, inspired by Jack's quick thinking. He taught them how to secure joints using stripped wiring as rope, how to test weight distribution, and how to create a simple but effective door mechanism. Just as the last light faded from the sky, they fitted the final roof panel. The shelter wasn't pretty, but it was solid. Jack had included angled supports to handle the gravity, ventilation gaps for their air filters, and even a small observation port. Inside, quickly, Jack ordered as darkness fell. Strange chittering sounds filled the night air, and glowing eyes appeared between the mushroom trees. Once inside, Jack showed them how to secure the door. The shelter was cramped with all 4 of them inside, but it was strong. The walls were double-layered with soil packed between them for insulation and strength. The roof was sloped to shed rain. I don't understand, Blue said, his skin showing patterns of amazement. Our deepest survival instincts tell us to flee or freeze. But you built something in hours that would take our best engineers days to design. Jack checked the seals one last time as something large brushed against the outer wall, testing it. The shelter held firm. Humans didn't become the dominant species on Earth by being the strongest or fastest, Jack explained, setting up their salvaged lights. We survived because we learned to adapt and build. Now let me show you how we're going to make it through the night. The aliens gathered around as Jack began to explain their night watch rotation, their eyes glowing with a new understanding of why humans were classified as Deathworlders, and a growing respect for what that truly meant. The first night on the deadly world tested every aspect of their shelter. Inside the cramped space, Jack organized their small group for survival. Their salvaged lights cast a dim glow, creating shadows on the metal walls. 2-person watch shifts, Jack explained, checking his watch. No one stays awake alone. The noise outside can play tricks on your mind. He glanced at the observation port where pairs of glowing eyes occasionally appeared, studying their shelter. Red continued recording. The human displays advanced planning behavior, even in rest periods, he muttered into his device. A massive roar shook the ground, making the aliens jump. Something large slammed against the shelter's side, testing the walls. The packed soil between the metal panels absorbed the impact, just as Jack had designed it to do. That's why we used double walls, Jack said calmly, though his heart was racing. The outer layer takes the hits, the inner layer stays strong. He checked the seals again, making sure their air filtration was working properly. Blue's skin showed patterns of fear. How can you be so calm? That creature could tear through. Another impact rocked the shelter. This time, they heard claws scraping against metal. Jack held up his hand for silence, listening carefully. The creature outside moved around their shelter, looking for weak points. Notice how the rounded corners deflect the attacks, Jack whispered. No square edges to grab. That's why we curved the walls. He smiled as the creature eventually lost interest and moved away. Earth's predators taught us these tricks thousands of years ago. Green, who was examining the wall structure, chittered in amazement. Your primitive shelters used these same principles. Still do, Jack replied, pulling out their small water supply. Whether it's a log cabin in bear country or a research station in the Arctic, the basics stay the same. Here, everyone drink a little. Need to stay hydrated in this gravity. The night brought waves of strange sounds. Screeches and howls echoed through the darkness. Sometimes they heard fighting. Massive creatures clashing with explosive force. The aliens huddled closer together during these moments, but Jack kept them focused. Tell me about your worlds, he said during one particularly loud battle outside. What's it like living somewhere peaceful? The aliens shared stories of their homeworlds, places with gentle breezes, stable weather, and herbivorous wildlife. As they talked, Jack noticed how their fear slowly changed to curiosity. Each time a creature tested their shelter and failed, their confidence grew. Halfway through the night, a new challenge emerged. The temperature dropped dramatically, and strange purple mist began seeping through the mushroom forest. "The temperature is becoming toxic for our biology," Red announced, checking his instruments. Even through our suits, Jack was already moving. He pulled out emergency blankets from his pack and showed them how to create a reflective layer around the shelter's walls. "Body heat," he explained, arranging the blankets. "If we contain it, we stay warm. Basic survival. Works on Earth when you're stuck in a snowstorm." The aliens watched in fascination as the shelter's temperature stabilized. Then the acid rain started. Heavy drops hammered their roof, but the angled panels channeled it away safely. "You planned for this too?" Blue asked, his skin showing patterns of admiration. Jack shook his head. "Not specifically. But on Earth, we learned to build assuming the worst will happen. Better to be over-prepared than surprised." Through the observation port, they watched as the acid rain drove most creatures to cover. The deadly precipitation created rivers of steaming liquid in the purple soil, but their shelter stood firm on its raised foundation. "Look," Green pointed suddenly. Through the port, they saw smaller creatures taking shelter under their structure's overhang. Even the local wildlife recognizes good engineering. Jack smiled. Life adapts. That's another lesson from Earth. Speaking of which, he pulled out some emergency ration bars. Time to eat something. Keep our strength up. As they shared the food, a particularly loud thunderclap shook their shelter. Lightning illuminated the alien landscape, revealing massive shapes moving through the mist. But instead of fear, the aliens now showed curiosity. "I finally understand," Red said, still recording. "When you said humans come from a death world, I thought it meant you were naturally stronger or more aggressive. But it's not that at all, is it?" Jack shook his head. "Earth's challenges didn't make us stronger. They made us smarter. Every predator, every disaster, every environmental threat taught us something." He patted the shelter's wall. "This isn't just a box of metal and dirt. It's thousands of years of human survival knowledge put to use." The aliens nodded in understanding as their shelter continued to protect them through the deadly night, each challenge proving the wisdom of human survival techniques. Dawn brought new challenges to the alien world. As the deadly night subsided, Jack led his companions out to inspect their shelter's exterior. The acid rain had left dark streaks on the metal panels, but the structure remained strong. "Not bad for a first night," Jack said, examining the walls. "But we can make it better." He noticed how the local wildlife had trampled the ground around their shelter, creating natural paths that showed their movement patterns. Green struggled in the heavy gravity, but insisted on helping with the inspection. "The metal shows stress marks here," he pointed. "The gravity is slowly warping the panels." "Good eye," Jack praised. "That's why we're going to add supports." He had been thinking about improvements all night. On Earth, survival wasn't just about making it through one night. It was about adapting and getting stronger. Red recorded as Jack drew his plans in the dirt. "Observe how the human uses the failure points as learning opportunities," he narrated. "Continuous improvement based on practical experience." "First," Jack explained, "we need better foundations. Those animal trails showed us where the heaviest creatures walk. We'll reinforce those areas first." He demonstrated how to dig trenches and fill them with packed soil and salvaged metal pieces. Blue, who had been watching the morning sky, suddenly pointed upward. "Storm coming. Different from last night." Jack looked up. Dark clouds rolled in, crackling with strange energy. The air felt different. Heavier, more charged. The local wildlife began seeking shelter, their behavior more agitated than during the night storm. "Inside. Quick," Jack ordered. They'd barely made it into the shelter before the storm hit. But this time, instead of acid rain, they faced something worse. The air outside turned from purple to green, and the temperature skyrocketed. "The atmosphere is changing composition," Red announced, checking his instruments. "The toxicity levels air." A thunderous crack interrupted him as lightning struck nearby. Their shelter's metal walls groaned under the sudden pressure change. "Everyone to the center," Jack commanded. "Away from the walls." He quickly pulled out more emergency blankets, creating an insulated space within their shelter. "The metal will heat up. We need to protect ourselves from our own shelter." The aliens followed his instructions, huddling together as the storm raged. Through the observation port, they watched in horror as the green air seemed to melt some of the local vegetation. "The shelter will hold," Jack assured them, though he watched the walls carefully. "But we're learning what this planet can do." "That's good. Means we can adapt." The storm lasted an hour. When it finally passed, they emerged to find their shelter standing but clearly strained. The outer panels were discolored, and some joints had weakened. "Now we rebuild," Jack said firmly. "Better and stronger." He pointed to the damaged areas. "Green, your engineering knowledge. How can we reinforce these joints?" The alien engineer studied the structure thoughtfully. "If we combine your Earth techniques with our ship's technology." His voice grew excited as he sketched ideas. They worked through the day, each alien contributing their knowledge. Blue suggested ways to improve their air filtration using ship parts. Red analyzed the storm's effects, helping them understand what future defenses they needed. Jack taught them how to work in the crushing gravity, showing them techniques used by Earth's construction workers and military engineers. They learned to brace themselves, to use leverage, to work in short bursts with rest periods. "On Earth," Jack explained while they reinforced the roof, "we have a saying. The first shelter keeps you alive. The second shelter keeps you safe. The third shelter makes you comfortable." By midday, their shelter had evolved. They added heat shields made from the ship's insulation, built pressure vents to handle atmospheric changes, created a proper airlock entry using salvage door mechanisms. "Remarkable," Red noted in his recordings. "The shelter is becoming a fusion of human survival instincts and advanced alien technology." A distant roar reminded them of the constant dangers, but now the aliens showed less fear. They had seen their shelter withstand the night, and they were making it stronger. "We're not just surviving now," Jack said as they finished the improvements. "We're adapting. That's what humans do best. We take what nature throws at us, and we build something better." The aliens looked at their improved shelter with pride. It wasn't just a human teaching them anymore. They were working together, combining their knowledge to create something new. "I think I understand now," Blue said, his skin showing patterns of deep realization. "This is how your species went from caves to starships." Jack nodded, already planning the next improvements. One problem at a time, one solution at a time. That's how humans build our way to the stars. On the third day, as Jack and his alien companions finished adding the final improvements to their shelter, a familiar sound cut through the alien world's atmosphere, the distinct hum of rescue ships. "They found us." Blue's skin rippled with joy patterns, but he didn't rush out immediately. Jack noticed with pride how the alien now checked the observation port first, a survival habit learned over the past days. 3 rescue ships descended through the toxic clouds, their advanced shields protecting them from the harsh environment. They landed in a triangular formation around the crash site, creating a defensive perimeter against the local wildlife. "Wait," Jack cautioned as his companions prepared to leave. "Let's do this properly." He helped them secure their breathing masks and check their seals one last time. Another habit they'd all learned to appreciate. Through their observation port, they watched as heavily armed rescue teams emerged from the ships, clearly expecting to find casualties. The teams stopped in surprise when they saw the shelter. "Look at their faces," Green chittered excitedly. "They can't believe what they're seeing." The rescue team's leader approached cautiously, weapon ready against the numerous predators that prowled the area. Jack activated their shelter's newly installed communication system, salvaged from the ship and modified to work with their limited power supply. "This is Jack Miller and survivors of Research Vessel 147, he announced calmly. "We're all alive and unharmed, requesting safe corridor to rescue ships." The rescue team was visibly stunned. Their leader spoke into his communicator. "Command, are you seeing this? They built a fortress in Deathworld conditions." Jack led his group through their airlock system, the last improvement they'd added. As they emerged, the rescue team moved to assist the aliens, expecting them to be in poor condition. Instead, they found them tired but strong, moving with practiced caution in the heavy gravity. "Impossible," one rescuer muttered. "No one survives 3 days on a Class 12 world without heavy equipment." Red held up his recording device proudly. "We did more than survive. We learned. Everything is documented." His scientific excitement was barely contained. "The human showed us how to live on a death world." The rescue team leader studied their shelter with professional interest. "This design, these adaptations," he turned to Jack. "You built this with crash salvage and local materials." Jack nodded. "The soil here packs like clay, makes good insulation when mixed with plant fibers. The local predators helped too, showed us where we needed to reinforce." As they boarded the rescue ships, more senior officials arrived to inspect the shelter. News had already spread through their communications network. Survivors had not only lived through a crash on a Class 12 death world, but had built a lasting structure. Blue, now standing straighter despite the gravity, addressed the officials. "We request that this shelter be preserved. It must be studied. What we learned here," his skin showed patterns of deep respect, "it will change how our species think about survival." Inside the rescue ship, as they finally escaped the crushing gravity, the aliens gathered around Jack. Green spoke first. "We've already transmitted basic reports to our homeworlds. Every engineering academy wants the shelter's designs. And my recordings," Red added. "The scientific community is calling it a breakthrough in Xen architecture. The first successful fusion of human survival techniques with our technology." Jack smiled, remembering their first terrified moments on the planet. "You all did the hard part," he said. "You trusted me when everything you knew told you to panic. You learned and adapted. That's as human as it gets." The rescue ship's captain approached them with a formal document. "The Galactic Council has officially classified your shelter as a protected historical structure. They're establishing a research station nearby to study it. And," he paused significantly, "they're requesting similar human-led survival courses for all space exploration teams." Blue's skin showed his brightest patterns yet. "From now on, every spacefarer will learn what we learned, how to think like a human when facing death world challenges." As their rescue ship broke through the atmosphere, Jack looked down at the deadly world below. Their shelter was still visible, a tiny dot of defiance against an unforgiving environment. Around it, the research ships were already setting up their equipment, preparing to study how 4 crashed survivors had done the impossible. "You know what the best part is," Jack said to his companions. "This is just the beginning. Wait until I show you how humans build underwater bases." The aliens leaned forward eagerly, their fear of death worlds replaced by an entirely new emotion, curiosity. They had learned the greatest human survival trait of all, the ability to turn any challenge into an opportunity to grow stronger. Green summed it up perfectly. "No wonder humans reach the stars. You don't just survive death worlds. You make them your home."